Is the world heading for a nuclear war, a worldwide destruction, the fall of civilizations and governments, the collapse of populations? We have all seen on TV what nuclear war looks like. But if you were a man living in the 19th century, long before nuclear weapons were invented, and you seen one in a dream, how would you describe it, not knowing what you were looking at? I then went to Central Park, and looking back, I saw a fire start. And just at that moment, a mighty east wind sprang up, and carried the flames west over the great city. And it burned until there was not a single building left standing whole, even down to the water's edge. Wharves and shipping, all seemed to be burned and swallowed up in the common destruction. Nothing was left but desolation, where a great city stood a short time before. Stench from the bodies that were burned was so great that it was carried a great distance across the Hudson River, and it spread disease and death wherever the fumes penetrated. I cannot paint in words the horrors that seemed to encompass me about. It was beyond description or thought for me to conceive. I suppose this was the end, but I was given to understand that the same horrors that were here enacted were all over the world, east, west, north, and south, that few were left alive. Still, there were some. The ironic thing is, most Russians don't want war with Americans. Most Americans do not want a war with Russians. Most Chinese don't want a war with Americans. Most Americans do not want a war with China. None of them in their right mind want to fight each other. Not like this. These were all nations that were allied in the Second World War. In the 19th century, Russians and Americans were almost friends. They are not natural enemies. Examining this from a purely logical standpoint, and not a realistic one, if all governments on Earth did not exist, there would not be another major war on Earth for many years to come, even for decades. There would certainly be a plethora of other problems if we had no governments, but waging war would not be one of them. In the 20th century alone, war killed many hundreds of millions of people. I have seen the end of this nation, and it is terrible. I tell you, in the name of the Lord, a secret band will sap the life of this nation. Moses Thatcher. The Doctrine and Covenants, Section 5, describes a day where the earth will be emptied of its inhabitants. For a desolating scourge shall go forth among the inhabitants of the earth, and shall continue to be poured out from time to time, if they repent not, until the earth is empty, and the inhabitants thereof are consumed away and utterly destroyed by the brightness of my coming. Behold, I tell you these things, even as I also told the people of the destruction of Jerusalem. Throughout the medieval ages, wars were fought for one important reason, beyond the conquest of land or the expansion of empire. It was a way for governments to get rid of or neutralize angry young men who might pose a threat. The author of all this destruction is the father of all lies. He is in control of all the nations and churches. Anyone who has seen what is broadcast on TV these days should realize who is in control and what it means. All of his endless minions on the earth, with their secret oaths, signs, and handshakes, that we read about in the book of Ether, think they are going to be given a place in this new order if they go along with the program, and most are terrified not to. But what they fail to realize is their usefulness ends when civilization collapses. They are known to be what modern times refers to as useful idiots, as only an idiot would destroy his own home and country. Only a dirty bird fouls its own nest. Yet that is how powerful civilizations always have been brought down, from within. It is a game that has been played since the beginning of the world. Ye hear of wars in far countries, and ye say that there will soon be wars in far countries. But ye know not the hearts of men in your own land. If you study the Scriptures and believe in them, then you should know who ultimately wins in the end. You know that Lucifer will be defeated and confined to chains. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the earth as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners? Yet it is this frightened, angry little man which currently terrifies the whole world. What do the Scriptures prophesy concerning this coming nuclear war? This comes from the Bible and the book of Revelation. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her, and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? Here is another prophecy concerning this same subject. And out of the sea the monsters of the deep shall rise up, and they shall send forth desolations as a flood upon that land. And I will bring clouds of dense darkness, and overcast them with the red glare of war. And they shall hang over that land, and the fear of the Lord shall seize the hearts of that people. For lo, the red and the black shall be against her, and their gathering hosts shall crowd upon the plain, and blood shall wash away the filth and the wickedness of that land. This next prophecy comes from the Bible in Malachi chapter 4. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be as stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. This next quote comes from Isaiah chapter 3. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the ways of thy paths. Anyone who has seen how women can destroy a man by divorcing him, taking away the house and making him a slave to child support and alimony, will understand verse 12. Our society has become so polluted. We read how on the dating sites 80% of the women chase after 20% of the men. These promiscuous men have all the women they want, and that doesn't seem to bother these women. These women are so haughty and vain they feel insulted to even consider what they view as a lesser man than who they are chasing after. And if any of these women come into the family way, we have endless abortions to get rid of that inconvenient little problem. Single mothers nearly outnumber married mothers. Only half the adult population of the United States are currently married. And of those, a high percentage have been married multiple times. And the majority of those will sooner or later end in divorce. People are marrying and giving in marriage, and populations around the world are collapsing. You know how it is written of them, the people of Noah, that they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, and knew not till the flood came and took them all away. And now, O ye children of the latter days, behold and hear. Shall it be more tolerable for you in the day of visitation than for them? They failed to learn wisdom until the flood came and took them all away. Only then did they understand. The Lord said he delights in the chastity of women. His first commandment was also to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. There is no way our society survives unless men and women become chaste again and have children after they are married. 50% of the population now has tattoos. What kind of men and women will undress themselves before strangers, to be looked at and touched while they draw graffiti on them? Will such women make good wives and mothers? Will such men make good husbands and fathers? Will God want to dwell in such temples scribbled in the graffiti? Moreover, the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle a rent, and instead of well-set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher a girdling of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. So what would cause the women to go bald and be so uncomely as what these verses describe? Could it be nuclear fallout? And what could heal them from that point except the healing power of God? The rest of Isaiah chapter 3 talks about how the Lord will get rid of the men and leave the women alone in a world without men. Isn't that what the feminist movement wants? Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war. And her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. Referring to Isaiah 13:12, some translations say that God will make man more rare than gold. And I will make mortal man scarcer than pure gold, and mankind than the gold of Ophir. A world largely without men. In 1846, the Donner Reed wagon train got stuck in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and the people resorted to cannibalism to survive the winter. During that time, 80% of the men perished, and 80% of the women and children survived. In times of crisis, men are designed to fight, and women are designed to survive famine and disaster. That is why there will be so few men left. Men will become so scarce. Continuing back to Isaiah chapter 4, it reads, "And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, even every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment, and by the spirit of burning." And again, here is another prophecy. "Those people which shall remain will I favor, saith the Lord. They shall rise in meekness and in righteousness out of the wrecks of their ruined empires. And I will provide new states and just governments, that all men may enjoy that equality of rights which the Father designed for them even from the beginning, but which has been sacrificed to the free agency of man. And I will cause them to grow and to multiply, and to fill again the waste places, and wax strong in the Lord, and great upon the earth. Hear it, ye nations that are now at peace, and ye nations that are at war. Hear it together. Verily, verily, I say unto you, that among the inhabitants of the earth which shall remain to possess the land, there shall arise statesmen indeed, who will guide them to a wise fraternity between nations, and point out to them those principles and policies of intercourse, which will destroy the motive of war. And these people who thus lay the axe at the root, which is the greed of nations, are the peacemakers, which shall be called the children of God. For they shall be my people, and I will be their God, and there shall be no more war. And when I shall consume the wicked as stubble, and leave them neither root nor branch in the earth, as saith the prophet Malachi, then shall these things be." What has been written which leads up to this great disaster? In 1893, a man named Charles Evans had a dream about the future of the United States. The nation had reached an unparalleled prosperity. Wealth abounded, new territory was acquired. Commerce extended, finance strengthened. Confidence was maintained, and people abroad pointed to her as a model nation. The ideal of the past now realized and perfected, the embodiment of the liberty which was sung by poets and sought for by sages. "But," continued the messenger, "thou beholdest a change. Confidence is lost, wealth is arrayed against labor, labor against wealth. Yet the land abounds in plenty of food and raiment, and silver and gold in abundance. Factions now sprang up as if by magic. Capital had entrenched itself against labor, and throughout the land labor was organized in opposition to capital. The voice of the wise sought to tranquilize their powerful factions in vain. Excited multitudes ran wildly about. Strikes increased. Lawlessness sought a place in the regular government. At this juncture I saw floating in the air a banner whereupon was written, "Bankruptcy, famine, floods, cyclones, blood, and plagues." Mad with rage, men and women rushed upon each other. Blood flowed down the streets of cities like water. Thousands of bodies lay unentombed in the streets. Men and women fell dead from terror inspired by fear. This was but the precursor of the bloody work of the morrow. All around lay the mournfulness of a past in ruins. Monuments erected to perpetuate the names of the noble and brave men were ruthlessly destroyed by combustibles. Earthquakes engulfed the earth in vast chasms, which engulfed multitudes. Terrible groanings and wailings filled the air. The shrieks of the suffering were indescribably awful. Waters rushed in from the tumultuous ocean, whose very roaring under the mad rage of the fierce cyclones was unendurable to the ear. Cities were carried away in an instant. Missiles were hurled through the atmosphere at a terrible velocity, and people were carried upward only to fall. The seal of the dread menace of despair was stamped on every human visage. Men fell exhausted, appalled, and trembling. Every element of agitated nature seemed a demon of wrathful fury. Dense clouds, blacker than midnight, obscured the sunlight, with a thunder that reverberated with intonations which shook the earth. Again the light shone, revealing an atmosphere tinged with a leaden hue, which was the precursor to an unparalleled plague, whose first symptoms were recognized by a purple spot which appeared on the cheek or on the back of the hand, which enlarged until it spread over the entire surface of the body, producing certain death. Mothers at the sight of it cast away their children as if they were poisonous reptiles. This plague in grown persons rotted the eyes from their sockets, and consumed the tongue as would a powerful acid or an intense heat. Wilford Woodruff in 1878 also saw a great plague overtake the nation. I was in Salt Lake City, walking through the streets. In parts of the city, and upon the door of every house, I saw a badge of mourning. And I could not find a house but was in mourning. I passed my own home and saw the same sign there. I asked the question, "Is that me who is dead?" Something gave the answer, "No." It seemed strange to me that I saw no person on the streets in my wandering around the city. They seemed to be in their houses with their sick and dead. I saw no funeral processions or anything of that kind. But the city was very still and quiet, as if the people were praying. It seemed as though the people had control over the disease, whatever it was, I did not know. That was not shown to me. I then looked in all directions over the territory, east, west, north, and south, and found the same mourning in every place throughout the land. The next I knew, I was this side of Omaha. It seemed I was above the earth looking down upon it as I passed along my way east. I saw the roads full of people, principally women with just what they could carry in bundles on their backs, traveling to the mountains on foot. And I wondered how they would get there with nothing but a small pack on their backs. It was remarkable to me that there were so few men among them. It did not seem as though the trains were running. The rails looked rusty and the roads abandoned. Indeed, I have no conception of how I traveled myself as I looked down upon the people. I continued east through Omaha and Council Bluffs, which were full of disease, and women were everywhere. The streets of Missouri and Illinois were in turmoil and strife. Men were killing one another, and women joined in the fighting. Family against family were cutting each other to pieces in the most horrible manner imaginable. Next I saw Washington, D.C., and found the city a desolation. The White House was empty, and the halls of Congress likewise. Everything was in ruin, and the people seemed to have fled from the city and left it to take care of itself. I was next in the city of Baltimore, in the square where the monument of 1812 stands in front of the St. Charles and other hotels. The dead were everywhere. I saw their bodies piled up, filling the square. I saw women cut the throats of their own children for the sake of their blood. I saw them suck it from their veins to quench their own thirst, and then lie down in the streets and die. The waters of the city and the Chesapeake Bay were so stagnant, and such a stench arose from them on account of the putrefaction of the dead carcasses in them, that the very smell carried death with it. Singularly again, I saw no men, except they were dead or dying in the streets. There were but very few women, and they were crazy and mad, or in a dying condition. Everywhere I went, I saw the same all over the city. It was horrible beyond conception to behold. I thought this was the end, but not so. Seemingly in an instant I was in Philadelphia, where everything was still. No living soul was to be seen to greet me. It seemed as though the whole city was without inhabitants. In Arch and Chestnut streets, in fact, everywhere I looked, the putrefaction of the dead bodies created such a stench that it was impossible for any creature to remain alive. I next found myself on Broadway in New York. There it seemed as if the people had done all they could do to overcome the disease. But in wandering down Broadway, I saw the bodies of beautiful women lying, some dead and others in a dying condition, on the sidewalks. I saw men crawl out of the basements and violate the persons of some that were alive, and then kill them and rob their dead bodies of the valuables they had on them. Then, before they could return to their basements, they themselves rolled over a time or two in agony and died. On some of the streets I saw mothers kill their own offspring and eat their flesh, and then in a few minutes die themselves. And wherever I looked I saw the same sights: horror and desolation, rapine and death. No horses, no carriages, no omnibuses, no streetcars. Nothing but death and destruction everywhere. John Taylor's vision has only been recorded by word of mouth and handed down through the generations, and the several versions are no doubt embellished. According to President Taylor's grandson in 1970, there are at least 3 versions of it. Some versions contain wording that is controversial, but is not found in this version. So take it or leave it for what it is. President Taylor's vision occurred while he was a guest at the Lunt family home in Cedar City. President Taylor stated that he saw Salt Lake City would become a great city, with many beautiful paved roads and streets, and that the people had become wealthy, and he saw the city extend almost to the point of the mountain. The people, he saw, had become quite indifferent to the counsel and advice of the authorities of the church, and were more interested in the accumulation of wealth than they were in living their religion. He told Mother he saw a war had been started, and that so great was the destruction of life within the city that blood ran down the gutters as though it were streams of water. And the destruction was such that it would cause the destruction of this beautiful city. The people were fighting among themselves until it became necessary to remove the church records across the Colorado River. President Taylor said to Mother, "If you are alive at that time, be sure you do not stay later than the church records, because after the church records leave and are made secure, the very powers of hell would be turned loose, and there will be such destruction that there will be but little life remain, not only in Salt Lake City, but in adjoining cities also. And in Jackson County, civilization will become entirely extinct, and every means of transportation, such as railroads and highways, will be destroyed, and the only means of travel will be on foot. All means of manufacturing will also be entirely destroyed. Be sure that when you see these things come, that you have buttons, needles, cloth, and things to work with as much as possible, to make yourselves clothing, because all tools and every kind of machinery will be destroyed. It will be such a destructive war that in comparison to the sufferings and drivings of the people of Nauvoo, it would only be a drop in the bucket. One half of the Mormon people will entirely forsake their leaders, and half of the other also, because of their sufferings, will forsake the church. Many Mormons will die in the struggle, but the Lord will bless those who stick faithfully to the church, and He will bless them to the extent that they will not be destroyed. President Taylor said that we will be few in number who are left, but we will assist the Lamanites in building the New Jerusalem. The above experience my mother told me many, many times, and she held this great experience very sacred. Subscribed and sworn this 28th day of June, 1951. Edward Lunt. This is taken from the last admonition of the prophet Joseph Smith on June 23, 1844. This day the Lord has shown to me that which was never shown to me before, that I have thousands of friends that never pretended friendship, while others have sought to crawl into my bosom because of my good feelings towards them, and now are the vipers and do seek my life. And if they shall take it, they will pursue you. They will do it anyhow. I therefore will say unto you, saints and elders of Israel, you will yet be called upon to go forth, and call upon the free men from Maine to gather themselves together to the Rocky Mountains, and the red men from the west, and all people from the north, and from the south, and from the east, and go to the west, to establish themselves in the strongholds of their gathering places. And there you will gather the red men to their center, from their scattered and dispersed situation, to become the strong arm of Jehovah. This is another prophecy which has not been written down, but handed down only orally from memory of those who heard it. So naturally, according to human nature, there is a strong probability it has been embellished over the years. There are many things in it which do not seem true. So again, take it or leave it, I will only quote a few parts from it. You will see the Constitution of the United States almost destroyed. It will hang like a thread as fine as a silk fiber. At that time the prophet's countenance became sad, and as he said, I love the Constitution. It was made by the inspiration of God, and it will be preserved and saved by the efforts of the white horse, and the red horse who will combine in its defense. The time will come when the banks of every nation will fall, and only two places will be safe where people can deposit their gold and treasure. This place will be the white horse and England's vaults. A terrible revolution will take place in the land of America, such as has never been seen before, for the land will be left without a supreme government, and every species of wickedness will be practiced rampantly in the land. Father will be against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother. The most terrible scenes of bloodshed, murder, and rape that have ever been imagined or looked upon will take place. People will be taken from the earth, and there will be peace and love only in the Rocky Mountains. This will cause many hundreds of thousands of the honest in heart of the world to gather there, not because they would be saints, but for safety, and because they will be so numerous that you will be in danger of famine. but not for want of seed, time, and harvest, but because of so many to be fed. Many will come with bundles under their arms to escape the calamities. For there will be no escape, except only by escaping and fleeing to Zion. Those that come to you will try to keep the laws and be one with you, for they will see your unity and the greatness of your organization. The Turkish Empire of the Crescent will be the first power to be disputed. For freedom must be given for the gospel to be preached in the Holy Land. England and France are now bitter enemies, but they will be allied together and be united to keep Russia from conquering the world. The two popes, Greek and Catholic, will eventually come together in their decline and be united. There is a land beyond the Rocky Mountains that will be invaded by the Chinese unless great care and protection be given. Speaking of this nation, he said, "Where there is no law, there is no condemnation." This will apply to them. Power will be given to the white horse to rebuke the nations afar off, and you obey it, for the laws go forth from Zion. The last great struggle that Zion will ever have to contend with will be when the whole of America will be made the Zion of God. Those opposing will be called Gog and Magog. The nations of the earth will be led by the Russian Tsar, and his power will be great, but all opposition will be overcome, and this land will be the Zion of our God. Amen. Returning back to the dream of Charles Evans in 1893, he wrote, "A foreign power had inroaded the nation, and from every human indication, it appeared as if it would seize the governments and supplant it with monarchy. I stood trembling at the aspect when a power arose in the West, which declared itself in favor of the Constitution in its original form. To this suddenly rising power, every lover of constitutional rights gave hearty support. The struggle was fiercely contested, but the stars and stripes floated in the breeze, and bidding liberty to all, waved proudly over the land. Among the many banners, I saw one inscribed thus: 'The government, based on the Constitution, now and forever.' On another there was, 'Liberty of conscience.' George Washington had a vision in which he saw America undergo three great perils. The first peril was the American Revolution. The second peril was the Civil War. The third peril, which is about to happen, was the greatest peril of all. And again I heard the mysterious voice saying, 'Son of the Republic, look and learn.' At this the dark, shadowy angel placed a trumpet to his mouth, and blew three distinct blasts. And taking water from the ocean, he sprinkled it upon Europe, Asia, and Africa. Then my eyes beheld a fearful scene. From each of these countries arose thick black clouds that were soon joined into one. Throughout this mass there gleamed a dark red light by which I saw hordes of armed men, who moved with the cloud, marched by land and sailed by sea to America. Our country was enveloped in this volume of cloud, and I saw these vast armies devastate the whole country, and burn the villages, towns, and cities that I beheld springing up. As my ears listened to the thunderings of the cannon, and the shouts and cries of millions in mortal combat, I heard again the mysterious voice saying, 'Son of the Republic, look and learn.' When the voice had ceased, the dark, shadowy angel placed his trumpet once more to his mouth, and blew a long and fearful blast. Instantly a light as of 1,000 suns shone down from above me, and pierced and broke into fragments the dark cloud which enveloped America. At the same moment the angel upon whose head shone the word Union, and who bore our national flag in one hand and a sword in the other, descended from the heavens attended by legions of white spirits. These immediately joined the inhabitants of America, who I perceived were nigh overcome, but who immediately taking courage again, closed up their broken ranks and renewed the battle. Again, amid the fearful noise of the conflict, I heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." As the voice ceased, the shadowy angel for the last time dipped water from the ocean and sprinkled it upon America. Instantly the dark cloud rolled back, together with the armies it had brought, leaving the inhabitants of the land victorious. Then once more I beheld the villages, towns and cities springing up where I had seen them before, while the bright angel, planting the azure standard he had brought in the midst of them, cried with a loud voice, "While the stars remain and the heavens send down dew upon the earth, so long shall the union last." And taking from his brow the crown upon which blazoned the word union, he placed it upon the standard, while the people, kneeling down, said, "Amen." The scene instantly began to fade and dissolve, and I at last saw nothing but the rising, curling vapor I at first beheld. This also disappearing, I found myself once more gazing upon the mysterious visitor, who in the same voice I had heard before said, "Son of the Republic, what you have seen is thus interpreted. 3 great perils will come upon the Republic. The most fearful is the third. But in this greatest conflict, the whole world united shall not prevail against her. Let every child of the Republic learn to live for his God, his land, and the Union." With these words the vision vanished, and I started from my seat, and felt that I had seen a vision wherein had been shown to me the birth, progress, and destiny of the United States. Let me finish the video with a couple of scriptural quotes. "And it shall be called the New Jerusalem, a land of peace, a city of refuge, a place of safety for the saints of the Most High God. And the glory of the Lord shall be there, and the terror of the Lord shall also be there, insomuch that the wicked will not come unto it, and it shall be called Zion. And it shall come to pass among the wicked, that every man that will not take his sword against his neighbor must needs flee unto Zion for safety. And there shall be gathered unto it out of every nation under heaven, and it shall be the only people that shall not be at war one with another. And it shall be said among the wicked, Let us not go up to battle against Zion, for the inhabitants of Zion are terrible, wherefore we cannot stand. And it shall come to pass that the righteous shall be gathered out from among all nations, and shall come to Zion, singing with songs of everlasting joy. For when the Lord shall appear, he shall be terrible unto them, that fear may seize upon them, and they shall stand afar off and tremble. And all nations shall be afraid because of the terror of the Lord, and the power of his might. Even so, Amen. And then cometh to pass the saying of the prophet, The earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And in that day no man saith unto his neighbor, Know thy God. For all the children of men which remain upon the earth shall know him, from the least unto the greatest.